All right, so Hobbes part 2. Sadly, there's people in the background now, so let me apologize for any background noises, like a really annoying whining German Shepherd. Okay, so we left off, right, in the last one at chapter 13, XII, paragraph 14, where he had said that we have certain passions that incline us to peace, and these passions are fear of death, desire for stuff, and the desire to have the freedom in order to get the stuff. Okay, and reason comes up with ways in which to get those things. So, in the same way that a bear has claws as his tools to get a salmon, the human being has reason as his tool to use a net or whatever fishing rod to catch the salmon. Okay, so reason is the tool, and the tools are for acquiring our appetitive goods. Then that means reason tells us how to acquire our appetitive goods, and those appetitive goods are staying alive and getting stuff. Okay, so in other words, peace is reason's answer for how to get the physical things we need. That's basically how it is. If you think of that in terms of religious ideas like, Christ as the Prince of Peace, or Aristotle, who said that, we didn't study this part of Aristotle, but he said that, we are by nature political animals, and, we seek peace, and, people talk about the greater good and all that kind of stuff. Notice what Hobbes is saying is, no, peace is nothing but a tool to get more stuff. And it turns out, maybe, although it sounds cynical and materialistic, it might be right. It turns out, for instance, that nations who do a lot of business together, like trading nations, rarely go to war. These sorts of things. Anyway, so we pick up our story at chapter 14, where he says of first and second natural laws and of contracts. So in number 1, he says, the right of nature, which writers commonly call jus naturale, is the liberty each man hath to use his own power as he will himself, for the preservation of his own nature, that is to say, of his own life, and consequently of doing anything which, in his own judgment and reason, he shall conceive to be the aptest means thereunto. So what is our right? Our rights are the liberty to use your power to save yourself and preserve your life. And part of that, as he says, to save ourselves and preserve our life, is the ability to use our talents, efforts, and time in order to secure the things we need. So in other words, we need life, but we also need liberty. And in the next paragraph, he talks about liberty, because liberty means not like the ability to do whatever the heck we want. Liberty means the ability to have the freedom to make a living, basically. So the freedom, to farm your farm in peace, take care of your family, that kind of thing. Because that's part of staying alive. Okay, and those rights can never be taken away. However, in number 3, the law of nature, he talks about the law of nature. And the law of nature, if you skip down to paragraph 4, he states it thus, it's in italics. Consequently, it is a precept or general rule of reason that every man ought to endeavor peace, as far as he has hope of obtaining it, and when he cannot obtain it, that he may seek and use all helps and advantages of war. So what is he saying? His point here is that we have natural rights, basically our rights to life and liberty. Can't take them away, because to take away your life and liberty is to kill you, right? Like literally. And so we have rights of life and liberty, and the law of nature is what we just read. That is, here's the law. Always seek peace, but if you can't get it, fall back on war. It's essentially survival instinct is all he's saying. And so if we all want to stay alive, right, and we're all rational, that would mean that part of our survival instinct is to seek peace, because given peace, we can have more stuff and more security. And so to human beings, reason itself compels us to seek peace, because we're so greedy, we realize that it's only in peace that we'll be able to get more stuff. Make sense? Which then brings us to, in the same chapter 14, if you look at paragraph 7, 8, 9, let's pick up at 9. The mutual transferring of right is that which is called contract. And so when you're talking about contracts, the deal is this. We have to transfer some of our rights, and that's called a contract. The thing about contracts, though, is that you give something to get something. And I'm just going to sort of paraphrase what he said so that it makes a little more sense. So the idea is, let's suppose we have a society, we're Walking Dead kind of thing, right? Where everybody is interested in getting their stuff. And so we might have to form alliances to create enough peace so that we can sit down and farm our little tomato patch or something, right? So you put all that together, and that means this, though. If we're all going to get along peacefully, but we still have our natural rights of life and liberty, it might be that some people, if they have, because in nature, right, we have a right to anything to survive. And so if in nature we have a right to anything to survive, that would mean that at the end of the day, we have the right to eat and kill each other and that sort of thing. And so it's not going to work. We're not going to have peace unless everyone agrees to give up some of their rights. And when they give up some of their rights, this is what happens. You say, okay, based on nature, right, where there's no government, where there's no nothing, there is no just or unjust. So in The Walking Dead, if you've got to take food from somebody else, say la vie, right? In nature, there's no justice or injustice in a wolf eating a rabbit. It's all about survival. And the same is true of human beings. So given our natural state, or the state of nature, where there's no government, then we are bound by the principle of self-preservation, which means you do whatever you want. If you need to eat somebody, you eat them, because it's about staying alive. It's only when we decide that we're going to live in peace that we then have to give up some of our rights. And so we have what he calls the initial covenant. It's a contract where everyone in the society gets together and says, okay, you know what? Basically, it boils down to live and let live. You say, I'm going to give up my natural rights to everything and limit my rights. So basically, I can, do my thing, farm my farm, take care of my family, but I won't interfere with yours. That kind of concept. And so basically, we set up boundaries. And if that's the case, then we can all do our own thing, flourish, we're good to go. That covenant, where we put our hands in and say, okay, so everybody is cool, we're going to limit our rights, and we're going to limit our rights for one reason and by one reason, that you also do it. So I'm not going to willingly go in and just give up my guns. I'm only going to put down my guns if you put down your guns, and then we're good. The problem with that, of course, is you can't trust people because they're greedy. So here's the whole point. This is where justice and government comes to Hobbes, is that when we create this initial covenant, we then elect somebody to enforce that everyone keeps their promise, and that's government. So government comes in after all the people get together and say, man, it would be so much better if we had peace, then we wouldn't be killing each other. Let's do it. Right on. Okay, we're all peaceful. Cool. Now let's elect Frank over here, give him a sword, and he's going to be the guy that makes sure we keep our promise to not screw each other over while we're working and bettering our lives. And that is where justice comes from. And if you go ahead to to part 2 of the Commonwealth, it's like the last couple of pages of the reading. He talks about the common causes of Commonwealth, and all this kind of stuff. And here is it where he says in number 4. So once we have set up a agreement to form a society by a covenant where we agree to limit our natural rights, we do so and we set up this government because it's for the good of us all. In other words, commonwealth, right? So the whole point of government is commonwealth. The point of government is us, the citizens, who get together and say, look, we are going to erect a government because it is in our self-interest. Because if there's a government which acts as watchdog over everybody, then everyone keeps their promise. If everyone keeps their promise, we have peace, and then we can all prosper. Okay. That's the logic of it, right? So look at paragraph 4. And be there never so great a multitude, yet if their actions be directed according to the particular judgments and their particular appetites, they can expect thereby no defense nor protection, neither against a common enemy nor against injuries of one another. So if we don't have some power over us, we're not going to be able to have common defense, right? Who's going to organize the common defense if we're all busy taking care of our own farms, right? Who's going to protect each other from criminals, that sort of thing. And so, in paragraph 13 there of part 2, chapter 17, this is where the rubber meets the road. He says, the only way to erect such a common power as may be able to defend them from the invasion of foreigners and the injuries of one another, and thereby to secure them in such sort as by their own industry and the fruits of the earth they may nourish themselves and live contentedly, is to confer all of their power and strength upon one man, or upon one assembly of men, that may reduce all of their wills, by a plurality of voices, unto one will, which is as much as to say, to appoint one man or assembly of men to bear their person, and every one to own and acknowledge himself to be the author of whatsoever he that so beareth their person shall act, or cause to be acted, in those things which concern the common peace and safety. In other words, what? So the only way it works is if we all get together and say, okay, we choose Frank, and we all agree that we give all of our power to Frank, and Frank is going to make the choices that benefit all of us. And we're going to agree that whatever Frank says goes. Because if I am a farmer dude, my concern is to my farm and my family. I don't have time to think about things like interstate roads or a national army or healthcare or something. I've got time to think about my farm and my family. So Frank over here is going to be the guy who is freed up from that sort of thing so he can look at what is best for us all. No citizen, no private citizen can understand what is good for the whole of America. It takes a certain perspective to rise above everybody to see what is good for the whole, and that is what he calls the Commonwealth. But that government, and I keep calling it Frank just to personify it, to give you a sense and make it a little analogy, but remember it's a contract, and there's only one reason for which we would give this guy power, and that is so that he protects us, to keep us alive, and allows us the freedom to pursue our economic interests. So as soon as he doesn't do that, it's over, and we fall back to our natural rights. So if the government doesn't protect our lives, and the government doesn't provide the liberty for us to have a decent economic lifestyle, it's over. Because that's the only reason that we agreed as citizens to have a government in the first place. So if the government starts preying upon us, or if the government is so inept that it can't protect us or give us a decent economy, then according to Hobbes, we fall back onto our natural rights and we don't listen to that government anymore. And that's it. That's what we call the social contract theory. So government is a contract between the society, well, not between, among the society, the members of society. So government comes from us. We choose it because it's expedient for us and it makes our lives better. And indeed, we pay taxes and we have to do what we're told to a certain extent, but it's way better than the chaos and anarchy that would be there were there not a government that had more power than we did. All right, and that's pretty much Hobbes.